Hi, everyone. It is Jaime Jo Wright here at Madlet Musings. And today I have with me Leslie Gould, coming to us with book 3 in her series. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Jamie.
How are you doing?
Yeah, great. Thanks
Good.
so much for having me.
No problem. It's always fun to have people, and I love the fact that I get to explore all types of different genres and books. And it's really hard, though, because after I get done chatting on the podcast, my to be read list just gets that much longer.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like I'm never going to catch up. Let's just be honest.
I have a retirement stash in my basement. I just keep collecting books, thinking, oh, I'll read that when I retire.
Right, right. Yep. And then you keep going, and when am I retired?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm closer than you are, but I'm
Well,
still a long ways away.
I don't think your readers want you retiring anytime soon either, so. No, this is great. We have a book coming out here. It's called By Evening's Light, and it's book 3 of the Amish Memories trilogy, or is there going to be more than just 3 books?
No, just yeah, 3 books. So this is the end of the series, which is always a little bittersweet.
Yeah, and this is the story of Treva Zimmerman. Now, has she shown up in any of the prior books?
Yes, she's
Okay,
the little sister. The first book focused on her oldest sister, Ivy, the
okay.
second on the middle sister, Brenna, and now it's Treva's turn.
Oh, how fun. How fun. So you've really gotten to know this family too.
Yeah, definitely. They will be missed.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one of the things with these is they are Amish genre, but you're also, if I'm not mistaken, you're doing a split time too, correct?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're dual time stories.
Okay, all right. So
Mhm.
it's always interesting. I think the last time we chatted too, I was interested because your dual time is actually adjacent to World War II also, correct?
Yes, yeah. The first book in the series was right before World War II and in
Okay.
Germany with a Mennonite family. The second, the historical, takes place in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, on a
Okay.
Mennonite farm that has German POWs working on the farm. And this story, the historical, takes place in 1948-49,
Okay.
partly back in Germany and back
Oh,
with that Mennonite family and all the post-war
wow.
things that are going on. The Cold
Mhm.
War starting. There's millions of refugees in Europe that need to be resettled.
Mhm.
There's digging through what all went on with the Nazis.
Right.
Germany is divided into 4 quadrants.
Okay.
The Soviet Union, is trying to gain more and more power.
Oh,
So yeah, just a lot going on.
I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things with World War II, especially as Americans. It's like once 1945 is over in our minds, the
Mhm.
war's over. Like you're done. But there was so much post-war going on, especially in Europe, that it never really settled, I don't think.
Oh
Like
yeah,
you
it
said,
took a long time to settle. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, if you think like the continuation of that to the Berlin Wall in
Mhm.
1961, and then the Cold War right up to the 1990s,
Right.
it
Right.
was yeah, lots of consequences,
Hmm.
that just continued on
Right.
after the war.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was little, of course, I'm aging myself now, but I can remember the 1990s. I can remember the 1980s. Remember how the Soviet Union was always this looming threat in the back of every news story that I would watch growing up. There's like, and then in the Soviet Union, and then in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, a lot of
Right.
influence. So tell us a little bit about By Evening's Light. I mean, you already mentioned that there's some return to Germany, and the Mennonite family, etc. But tell us a little bit about
Mhm.
Treva's story and what she's going to encounter.
Yeah. So Treva has been in Haiti working at an orphanage. She's had her first serious love, and it's ended in breaking up. And she comes back to Lancaster County, but she doesn't plan to stay. And this
Okay.
story is really a story about loss, about loyalty, about kind of split loyalty to your family or to yourself, and
Mm,
that trying to kind of reconcile the past with the present and also move on to the future. So Treva's plan is that she's going to go to Alaska. She's met a couple in Haiti who have a resort up there, and she's going to go up to Alaska and work for them and leave her broken heart and all of her family obligations behind. Well, she
Mhm.
has grandparents who are in their 70s and her Aunt Rosine, who is in her early 90s.
Okay.
So she's really torn because she really loves these people. She really loves the farm, but she's at that point where she really wants to self-actualize, and she wants to determine her own future.
Yeah.
But then her Aunt Rosine has a cardiac event, and Treva's really faced with, do I stay and take care of these people I love? Um, and what about the farm? That there's nobody really in line to take over the farm, and she loves farming, but she also wants to go and see what kind of a life there might be out there for
Right.
her. So she just has a lot of decisions to make around that.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to explore, so often we really focus on the people who leave,
Mhm.
instead of the people who stay. And it takes a lot of courage, sometimes not to leave. And
Right.
luckily Treva gets to leave and kind of make her decisions. So I won't, give all of it away. But all of this is wrapped around her Aunt Rosine, who has been in every one of the stories, both the
Okay.
historical and the contemporary. And this is just like a character that I love so much. And when I had my first book published, I was 41. And it was 20 years from my 20s. So I, still really related with,
Mhm.
my younger protagonists. And I still do. I love that age group. I taught college, at a local university. I just adore that age group. But now I'm in my early 60s. And, so I'm 30 years younger than Rosine. But I just find myself, really resonating with her story and
Mhm.
just having this long, long life. And here she, um, knows the story of Germany in the 30s. She was born in the 20s, and she's just seen so much. And I really
Right.
appreciate her perspective. And one of the things for Rosine is that, just like Treva has had her heart broken,
Okay.
Rosine had her heart broken when she was in her 20s. And so one of the really fun things about this story is I bring back her first love into the story.
Oh,
So nobody knows where he ended up, what happened to him. And so that's really part of the story, is
okay.
finding out where Zeke is,
Oh,
and then, bringing back their relationship after all these years.
yeah.
So that was just really, really thrilling to write.
So if you it's one of those things, like sometimes I'm writing a book and I don't know if you get this too, where you have your heroine, which in this case would be Treva, but yet there's another sub character that almost takes first place in your heart. Is that kind of how Rosine is for you?
Yeah, I adore Treva, but I think it's just that Rosine has been in all the stories, and we have just seen her story from the time she was a child to now, being an older woman, and she still has things to reconcile with her family in Germany, and just things like that
Right.
too.
Right.
Um, and just what happened in 1948 and 1949 when she went back to Germany. And so this has been my challenge with writing dual time stories, is that usually the historical story has higher stakes,
Hmm.
that the stakes are more, physical danger or that sort of thing, where the stakes in the contemporary stories or are more emotional and are more of an inner journey, which I think the inner journey, outer journey, I don't think you can say that one's more important than the
Yeah.
other, because the stakes in anyone's inner journey are huge. And
Right.
they can be life and death too.
Mhm.
um but Rosine, I'll just say she's lived a really full life.
It sounds like she has. And honestly, you look back and you think about the generation that lived through the war.
Hmm.
And we're kind of I was looking at that time era too, because I was needing to develop a character that remembered things that happened in the 20s and 30s. And I was realizing, oh, maybe they're not alive anymore. Like when I was a kid, those people were always they were everywhere and you could talk to them. And now so much of that is has passed on,
I
you know.
know, I know. And I was, you know, every year we just lose more of our World
Mhm.
War II veterans. And yeah, and now even our relatives who were alive during that time, who were children. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. It's a big loss.
It is a big loss. And again, you don't typically hear um, stories from that era or that World War from an Amish slash Mennonite perspective. So I
Yes.
think that's so neat. So what made you, and we might have touched on this in the last podcast, but I want to ask again, what made you go into that area of the Amish history?
Right. So one of the things I just love about writing dual time stories, and especially when it comes to the Amish Mennonite stories, is just juxtaposing the Anabaptist community during times of war.
Okay.
Because never is it more clear that they hold different ideals than
Right.
the rest of the nation because they are non-resistant. They don't believe in war. They literally believe in turning the other cheek
Mhm.
and all of that. So there's a lot of conflict
Okay.
around for the Anabaptists, for the Amish and Mennonites during times of war. And, back in the Revolutionary War, they had to pay a tax so that they didn't have to fight a lot. A lot of them fled to Canada
Really?
so that they
Okay.
wouldn't have to fight, right? So through the different series that I've written, I've explored every single war
Mm.
with with an Anabaptist person involved somehow, a Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War I, II, now the Cold War.
Right.
I had a character who went to Vietnam to work in a clinic
Hmm.
during the Vietnam War, and I've had people who lived next to Amish people who were veterans of the Afghanistan War.
Okay.
So I'm just fascinated with how does that affect people? Like during the Vietnam War, there were some pretty big repercussions,
Mhm.
and just to get that conscientious objector status takes a lot, and just all of that.
Yeah.
So, and I probably did mention this, I won't dwell on this very much, but when I was researching another book, I came across that the Mennonites in Germany supported Hitler. And my big question was, why would they support Hitler? So that's what got me in this Amish Memories series, was just to answer that question.
Uh-huh.
So
Now, is it giving away too many spoilers if I ask you what you found the answer to be? Because I'm really
yeah,
curious why.
yeah, it's not really giving
Okay.
anything away at all. It's because Stalin killed, along with Jewish people and just lots and lots of Ukrainians. He killed Mennonites, or had Mennonites killed too, during the early 1930s. So when they were collectivizing the farms, they were taking away private property. They had silos full of grain, and they starved people to death. They would not let them get to the food. So
Oh,
Mennonites starved. Some of them were able to get to Canada or the US or South America.
mm,
But so the Mennonites in Germany were terrified of Stalin.
okay.
And I think this last book by Evening's Light, sheds more light on that because, by the Cold War, it's
Hmm.
really obvious to the whole world that,
Yeah.
there was, I mean, this is just the way history is, right? I mean, it was because of Russia that the Allies won World
Right.
War II because
Right.
of the US and Russia working together. And then, the next thing that happens is, there goes the Iron Curtain and, countries are taken over, more people die. It's just the way of the world. It is so sad.
It really is. When I was little and I would study, because I loved studying history when I was in elementary school, middle school, all the way on up. Um, but I had this almost, I shouldn't say glorified, but it was probably a glorified view of America in a war,
Mhm,
so to speak,
mhm,
in that it was very black and white. Like if Americans are on this side, then that's the side. And it was very obvious that that was the correct side because the Americans were on the side. And there's
mhm,
patriotism that goes into all of that as well. And having been raised in a family of military army men and all that, there's a lot of pride
mhm.
that goes into our
Yeah,
military, which is totally
because they're
great.
heroes.
But
Right.
it is interesting when you get older and then you really start delving into not just the stories of the war, but the politics behind the war, and then all the other little threads
Mhm.
that influenced decisions that were made that didn't necessarily even have anything to do with that specific. But I knew that
Yes.
if this happened, then the repercussions over here to a completely different situation. And
Mhm,
suddenly war just becomes so murky and confused.
mhm. Right, and then you get corporations involved and then different government agencies, and that's one of the things that comes into play in By Evening's Light is, spying. So I have a
Ooh.
couple of female, spies in the story.
Ooh.
And it's, kind of starts out as low key, but that's part of what Treva um, tries to find out for Rosine. Like, what actually happened? What were these other women that she knew? What were they involved in and what were they doing?
Mm.
And that was fascinating because I found all sorts of information. Like early on, there were some people, anyone working in the Red Cross was supposed to be neutral. But
Okay.
early in the war, there were some Red Cross workers working as spies in Northern Africa. There were even some people in the Red Cross working as spies for Germany.
Mhm.
There were, different points where missionaries who were spying. Just things are pretty well spelled out that you're not supposed to do, but just the decisions that people make, when it comes down to how can I help my country,
Right.
and how can I help these people who need to get out of a really bad situation.
Right.
So
Right. Some
yeah, so all sorts of compromises.
It is, it is. It's just it's so, like, murky and muddy, and some of the decisions are made on a small personal scale that have
Yeah.
little impact to do with the government, but major impact to do with that one person standing in front of you that needs whatever it is that they
Yeah.
need. So,
Right.
wow. So the research side of things that you did, now you gave me a little tidbit on this. You have an undergraduate degree in history and you were a museum curator.
Yes.
So you know how to
Yeah.
research.
Yeah. I love researching. Yes. So when I was well, right after college, I married my right before my senior year of college, and after college, my husband and I moved to this beautiful little town in Southern Oregon called Ashland. And
Okay.
Ashland is on the map because of the Oregon Shakespearean Festival. They also have a university in town, and there's a Southern Oregon Historical Society, in that county, in Jackson County. So we moved to Ashland, and I started volunteering at the museum.
Okay.
And then I got hired as the assistant, and then the curator resigned, and I got the curator job when I was only 23 years old.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and I was so aware of how young I was, and I could not believe that these people trusted me with the history of their town. And they were like amazing people. Like I had volunteers, in their 60s and 70s, and then just all these people who had been born in Ashland and grew up in Ashland. And it's, one of those towns because it's a college town and all these other things that has a really high educated population and people are super involved and, all of that sort of thing. So I worked in this house in a colonial revival house on the college campus with a huge lawn and these, gorgeous Douglas fir trees in
Mhm.
the yard. And it was just amazing location. And I did walking tours of the town. It has like amazing architecture in the town. And uh, um, I did an exhibit where I interviewed people who grew up in Ashland and, I blew up pictures from their childhood and got
Yeah.
artifacts from them. And so it was in Ashland where I first really understood setting as far as what it was like in the past and then what it was like today. And
Right.
I love your cat.
I know. I was trying to have a conversation. What are you doing? Get down, kitty. You're making it hard to concentrate.
Oh, oh. So yeah, so I just really setting became so real to me, but historical settings too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would do oral interviews with people and
Mm,
who were like in their 80s and
mm.
lived in the same house their entire lives and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so then I actually set my very first novel, which is called Garden of Dreams in Ashland, and
Okay.
it's a contemporary story. And at first, all I wrote was contemporary stories. And
Okay.
one summer, I was at the Oregon Christian Writers Conference, and there was a young woman I knew who taught history at on the high school level. And I asked her, I said, and she wrote contemporary fiction too. And I
Okay.
said, well, have you ever thought of writing historical fiction? And she said, no. And I thought, why not? And then I thought, wait, Leslie, that's you. You are
Right.
doing history. You know how to research.
Yeah.
You had all of this experience, in Ashland, like really working with both the past and the present.
Mhm.
Um, and after that, I started, experimenting with writing historical, and then I wrote a series with Mindy Starnes Clark, Cousins of the Dove series,
Mhm.
and it's about the Huguenots. And it's a dual time story, and it starts in France in 1685. And I went to France and researched this story with the help of friends who live in France, whose ancestors happen to be Huguenots, which I had no idea. But anyway, just
Yeah.
researching, writing that series, it was like, oh, I have to keep doing this. And then, I started writing Amish fiction, several years before that. And I thought, oh, yeah, this really lends itself to the Amish because, here they are, keeping their customs and their religion and all of that alive in the US, where every other group pretty much assimilated.
Mhm.
The Huguenots assimilated within really, a few decades.
Mhm.
But somehow the Amish, managed to really keep what
Yeah.
they came here with. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh yeah, I have to write about that. And I have to
Yeah.
explore, how they did that. So yeah, so really that job as curator of that just delightful, wonderful museum and that experience. I I think that's really what ultimately going back to that and thinking about it, made me think, oh yeah, I could write historical. And don't ask me why I didn't think that earlier.
Well, I think
'Cause
sometimes writers too, you look at what's current in the market, and so you
yeah.
just write for that or something, and then all of a
Oh,
sudden it's not,
yeah.
I mean, I can do it, but it's not where I'm finding my greatest joy or
Oh no, that's so true because agent or editors and agents for about a decade in there were saying, "Oh, nobody wants historical," and then all of a sudden, boom! Everybody wanted historical again.
Yeah.
So, to anyone out there writing, if people
Yes.
don't want what you're writing right now, just wait a couple of
Mhm.
years.
Just keep writing. Yeah, the industry, the ebbs and flows on what's, I don't want to say demanded, but what tends to be the trend.
Hmm.
And that's for sure. But I think that's an important part to make with your books too, because I got one of your books from my mother-in-law. She loves Amish fiction, and she read it. And she absolutely loved it. I think it was the first one in this series. In fact, I know it was. It was the first one in this series. And but then she handed it back to me as though I wasn't aware of who you were, and she goes, you really need to read this. She goes, I know you don't read a lot of Amish, but this isn't just Amish fiction. This is historical fiction
Yeah.
with Amish people in it and about the Amish lifestyle. And so she was making that connection that there is more to the genre of Amish genre than just the Amish stories that some of us see in the grocery stores and things like that that
Mhm,
we're like, oh,
mhm,
it's just Amish fiction. Yours are really historically deep. Like there's a
mhm.
lot more to them than just the stereotypical Amish romance that a lot of people think.
Well,
Um,
bless her. Tell her thank you.
She was very excited, very excited. And, she was one of those readers too, who one of the reasons she gravitates toward the Amish fiction is because she enjoys the simplicity and the pleasantry of the simple life. And it's kind of a feel-good story where you
Mhm.
can escape. But she said it was great to escape and yet also see how the Amish don't necessarily escape. Like
Yeah,
there's this idea that if you're Amish, you're just so set apart, the world
right.
around you doesn't touch you, but
Mhm.
that's not true.
Definitely not true. Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly. But when I write my Amish stories, even though there's a lot of conflict and the
Mhm.
world's all around and everything's going on, it takes me back. Like my one of my grandmas had a wringer washing machine, which
Mhm.
most of the Amish use. And
Right.
my other grandparents lived on this little small little farm. And I go out and help with the milking. And so when I write these stories, it takes me back too. So I understand why readers like it.
Yeah.
It's very nostalgic because of that.
Mhm.
And I think for, women my age and a little older, we have those memories with
Yeah.
people that we really dearly, dearly loved.
Right.
And I know those things. Well, probably most people probably don't have wringer washing machines anymore unless they are Amish. But
Not sure we want them, but okay.
yeah, I was always terrified of it when I was little.
Right.
Like, but I know, of course, people still live on farms and that sort of thing, but not nearly as many people as used to. We've just lost a lot of rural
We have.
lifestyle that we
Yeah,
had.
we really have lost a lot of the rural. In fact, this weekend we planted our garden here at home,
Mhm.
and my daughter was out there and she was kind of standing there in her bare feet and she was looking a little bit lost. And I was like, put down your phone, baby. It's time. back into time. This is what we do to survive. And so she was helping me mulch the plants and all that. And then she's 14 and she goes, you know, this is kind of relaxing. And I'm like,
Oh,
it is. And you start teaching the next generation to do some of those whether you call them survival things or just, country
yeah.
little
Or basic life skills.
basic life skills, right? And you don't see a lot of people
Mm.
canning anymore, but we
Yeah.
canned pizza sauce
Oh,
this year, and just teaching them how to use a pressure cooker, how to
mhm,
can food and things like that.
mhm,
Do we need to do that to survive? Not necessarily now, but I do think there's the value in learning
mhm. I do
the
too.
hard earned.
Well, and there's such satisfaction in it.
It
And
is.
the other thing is it really, really makes you appreciate farmers because
It is.
I've had years like when I've tried to grow squash and it just wouldn't grow. Like I can do tomatoes, lettuce, spinach, that sort of thing. But, sometimes some things, it's hard to get some things to grow.
We've tried to grow watermelon the last 3 years because we have sandy soil and we've been told we should be able to grow amazing watermelon. We've yet to grow a good watermelon. And this year, my husband was out planting watermelon, and my daughter's like, really? We're trying again? And he goes, I can't quit now. I have to grow the perfect watermelon. Oh,
It's a challenge.
yes.
Yes.
Well, for readers who are listening to this, we've kind of gone all over the place today, which is great. That's what makes these conversations so fun. But the book is called By Evening's Light. It's book 3 in the Amish Memories series. Now, if I were to pick this up, can I read this one without reading book 1 and 2, or do I need to read book 1 and 2 first?
Yeah, you could, but I really recommend reading book one
Okay.
and two first. It'll be a much more, holistic, satisfying experience.
Well, and it sounds like we kind of
Yeah,
travel with Rosine through all the
yeah.
books too, so getting the
Yeah,
full.
you really get Rosine's full story. I mean, none of them end on a cliffhanger or anything like that, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you'll definitely get the whole story, get all the background.
Well, the book is out this August of 2024. And Leslie, do we have more books on the horizon once this one's released?
I'm working on a series. The working title is Letters from Paradise. And I'm going back to romance. And
Okay.
it's a 3-book series, and all of them are anchored around an Amish circle letter in some
Um,
way. So it's kind of like the Amish social media,
oh yeah, for
but it
sure.
takes a little longer because it's snail mail. So yeah, it's been really fun to kind of go back to writing a romance.
Yeah.
And the first book has a lot of birding in it,
Okay.
um, which so all of a sudden I've been going to bird sanctuaries
Yeah.
and buying books on birds and just really loving that. Putting up bird feeder,
Uh-huh.
couple bird feeders. So yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
it's been fun to write.
I've thought of putting up bird feeders too, but I have too many cats, so I figured it's
Yeah.
birds.
Right. I put mine up really high and far away from where the cats, they my cats don't go outside very much. They're pretty lazy, just in
Like
case.
why hunt for birds when I can go to my food bowl?
Oh,
Well,
they're so well fed. Yeah. But
good. So this sounds exciting. So we have more Amish romance coming from you in the
yes.
near future, and we'll keep looking for the bookshelves. So, well, Leslie, thank you
Great.
so much for being here. I'm sure we'll do it again, but this has been
Mhm.
a fun conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie.